So many of us are afraid of what happens after we die. That's really what actually makes us hold on and makes us hold on to this fear of death so strongly, right? And it helps us keep to that fear so tightly, to the point that one of the most generous things that we can do for our loved ones who transition is to be with them and to whisper and to give them the permission that it's safe and allowed for them to move on, to trust in the next unfoldment of the journey. Because remember, life is about becoming, and the process of death is life becoming. And so I wanted to share with you something I was thinking. You see, isn't it fascinating to recognize that right now I'm in the process of dying? There are cells in my body that are dying and replenishing themselves, and yet my consciousness is not dependent on those little deaths. My consciousness is continuing to expand. Isn't that fascinating to think, right? My consciousness continues to live. I am living, even though right now I'm experiencing the process of death. And then think about it even further. We know that the body regenerates itself, replenishes itself every so many years. So right now, the Mira, who was 7 years old, her body has already died. And yet Mira is living. Isn't that fascinating to consider as a gateway opening into this conversation for us to clear our fear of death and dying? And to add even more to it, I want to bring in what quantum physicists tell us, which is that consciousness blinks in and out of existence. Matter blinks in and out of existence. So what this means is that, well, scientists tell us that consciousness blinks in and out of existence 7.8 times per second. So what that means is 7.8 times per second, I literally die. My consciousness blinks in and out of existence. I return back into the quantum field and then come right back into matter, from the void into the focused presence. And so this fear of us dying is really more about that moment. Is this getting to be way too much, you guys? The sun in your eyes? Let me know. The fear of us dying then also becomes this fear of what happens when the spirit leaves the body, if you will, when consciousness separates from the body. And there's really not one point of death, I have to tell you. So this fear of annihilation, it doesn't work that way. Actually, consciousness continues, to the point where some souls who transition don't even understand that they have transitioned, right? And so, but I'll touch upon it in a second. So going back to that moment of death and dying, it's not the same experience for everyone. Some people separate in an earlier moment than the physical dying of the body, the heart rate stopping, the heartbeat stopping. For others, it's exactly in that moment. Everybody has a different experience, right? Literally, there's not one size fits all. And the reason for that is, I should say something. However, whenever there's an impact, an accident, how should I put it? An accident, right? Like, this is literally the word for it. what happens is the pain, the consciousness within the cells of the body eject the spirit, the soul out of the body. So actually that fear of I will experience pain doesn't really happen that way. I don't think you can even see me anymore. We gotta move things around. How about this? So oh, I have to tell you, that's also the reason why the sedatives we use when somebody is hospitalized for a long-term period become very confusing for the body, for the consciousness, for the whole dying experience, because it's not the normal function. The normal function gets impeded, which ejects consciousness, right? But so be it. I'm just gonna put this neither here nor there. I'm not gonna go about changing the medical system today. So, and obviously people who are in discomfort and in pain and need medication need to get it. I simply wanted to just make that observation. And so even the moment of us dying, the way of us dying is actually quite a big deal, right? It's a creative process. It's a way for the soul to get to experience its creativity, right? So there's so much meaning and lesson and learning even in the very moment of us dying, okay? I have to tell you, I have decided for myself how I am going to die. I went through a very traumatic experience. It was traumatic for all of us when my father passed away. And so that taught me what I want for myself, okay? So I believe that each one of us gets to choose how we die. Now, am I open to my soul knowing better, to my subconscious and my psyche knowing better? Yeah, but I also know I'm gonna get my way on this one because, you know, this is something I feel pretty confident about. So here it is, you guys. I want to die in my sleep. Very simple, very simple. No stress, no accidents. I don't want to burden anybody with any medical bills or needing to rush into hospital. So all my loved ones, you need to, right? Like you need to know someday in my sleep, I'm going to be gone. And I feel quite good about it, right? I'm like, yeah, this feels right for me. Now, that's not the case for everybody, right? That's why I was telling you, everybody, the moment of dying, the way of dying is a very creative experience. So much to learn, so much to figure out, so much to go through. So for everyone, that's going to be different. For me, I'm going to be in my bed and it's gonna be easy because I like easy, you know. If you guys know this about me, I have an easy button, obviously not right here with me on the porch, but you know, things are good when they're easy in my world. And so I believe that we get to decide this for ourselves. So I really encourage you, decide how do you want to die. And so here we go. We're talking about the death process, right? What happens when we die. And so here we are now at the moment of consciousness leaving the body. I was going to mention something, so since I remember that, I might as well tell you. So here's what's everybody's observation. Usually it's easier for people to transition when their loved ones are not around. I was even talking to a friend the other day, and the friend was saying our dog was old, had cancer, and then one day the dog ran away and we never found him. And so what we think happened is he just ran away to die. And I was like, I totally get it. Because everybody who has been in hospice, as a hospice worker, bless your hearts, oh my God, like I cannot say anything other than you're extraordinary people. Or had a family member in hospice will say, yeah, that's how it goes. The moment the family leaves, that's when the soul says, okay, now I can transition. Hi, Lily. Lily is saying, hi, Mira. I love you and your energy. Lily's mom and mom and I have had a conversation of how things are gonna go. So mom knows what I'm talking about. So, the moment the spirit leaves the body is when things get interesting. I know it's a poor choice of word, but hear me out. So remember, consciousness creates reality, right? Like that's the paramount experience. So whether it's in life or whether it's after life, the same rule applies. So what this means is that the moment the spirit separates from the body, what happens next again depends on beliefs. Simple as that, right? So if somebody believes that they're worthy of hell, that they're going to experience hell, they're going to create a hell experience. I am not kidding you. And I actually have had that experience. So I have had a past life regression where I observed the soul leaving the body, and then I ended up in this big cauldron and I was basically boiling in hell. And at first, it was the disorientation of what just happened. And then it took me some time to realize, and then I was like, wait a minute. In that life, I believed that I was worthy of punishment because of the way I lived life and what happened. And so because of that belief and expectation, that's exactly why I ended up here. And the moment I had this realization, there was this beam of light, these guides that showed up, and this is what they did, right? They're like, rise, you don't need to be here. And so this was such a profound learning lesson for me to be like, oh my God. So really this whole thing of heaven and hell, because of the construct, because of the expectation, if the person believes it, that's what they get to experience, right? That's where they go. So same thing, if the person actually believes in heaven and wholeheartedly expects that they're going to end up in heaven, they will have that construct. Now, in both versions of hell and heaven, there are guides and the soul is not alone. And literally I'm going to use the word hallucination. Of course, it's not a hallucination because to the soul, it's a real experience, right? Me being in that cauldron with the boiling stuff and being like, oh my God, I'm in hell was a very real experience. So it's really just consciousness created. That's what I mean. So there are guides who will be right there with you to be like, you know what? You created this. Thoughts create reality. Just because you stepped out, in a way, figuratively speaking, outside of the physical experience, it doesn't mean that you stop being the creator. In fact, in the spirit world, the creations are faster, more immediate, more good, so much more. All right? And so that's also the reason, I know I'm going to be super controversial here, but I'm going to say it. That's also the reason why I'm very skeptical when in near-death experiences people talk about going to heaven and being met by Jesus or an archangel or all of that. Now, the reason why I'm being skeptical that it's actually Jesus who went to see them, of course, let me put a big disclaimer of who am I? What do I know? All right? Like it could be really Jesus for these people. But the reason why I'm being skeptical when people share these near-death experience stories is because consciousness creates reality. Expectation creates reality. So if these people actually expect to go to heaven and expect Jesus because, they read the Bible every day and they have accepted Jesus as their personal savior, nothing wrong with it. I'm not putting anybody or anything down. We all need our beliefs and faith to carry us through. But if this is what I expect, this is what I'm gonna see. You see, this is really the important piece. So that's why when people talk about their near-death experiences, when they talk in these speak about these religious experiences, I immediately go, oh, this must be a very religious person, even though the story is not gonna, the story of the near-death experience is not going to tell me this. I already know, right? So this is to say, and by the way, in this proverbial human created vision of what heaven is, a consciousness will get bored. Literally, it'll last 3 seconds and be like, okay, well, this is beautiful, but nothing's happening, right? Because remember, consciousness is all about experience and growth and creation. So really, the moment the soul leaves the body, we are very mistaken in being afraid that there is something abrupt happening. That's why I was talking to you earlier in saying, right now, I'm experiencing death and I don't even think about it, right? Because the cells in my body are dying. I am in the process of death, and yet my consciousness is continuing. So, by the way, I know I didn't say it earlier, but let me just plug it in right here. Consciousness is not dependent on the body, right? Like the existence and the survival of us is not dependent on the cells of our body. Please share this with your friends, because this is part of the reason why people are so terrified of death, because they think that the moment the cells die, the heart stops beating. What that means is annihilation, void, blackness, nothing. And so that's the terror, right? That's the fear. And not the case, not at all, not at all. You will continue experiencing. And now, if you actually have a belief, the knowledge, the understanding that there is more to life once we cross over, your transition will be easier, because your orientation in the spirit world will be so much faster, right? You're not going to be the person sitting in the cauldron like me in hell and dealing with that, right? So you will move through that process of dying much faster. Now, the experience, especially for mentally ill people, is challenging, if you will. It's shocking, challenging. And it's the reason being is because of the division of the different layers of the psyche. There isn't a unity of consciousness there. And so what I'm really trying to tell you is, the moment the soul leaves the body, everybody's on their own self-designed journey. Everybody will have their own experience. Now, there's the common thread that each one of us will be connected with helpers and guides. Now, this is where the earlier question that I read to you from the group comes in. Because when this woman was saying, I would be awakened in the middle of the night, and I will hear a whisper that somebody will be passing away, and this has been happening all my life. What this tells me is that this woman is a helper who, in her soul state, in her dream state, assists people who transition. And so the reason why living souls do this, right? The reason why the people who are here on earth help with this transition for souls who have already left the earth, is because we're here. We know what it means. We're physically oriented. So in that dream space, even though my soul may not remember that this is the service that I do, or that this woman who so graciously provided, this conversation for us, she doesn't have a conscious memory of, this is my nighttime job, right? Like, the body falls asleep and I dissociate for a long period of time. My consciousness travels away, and I help people who have transitioned to make the orientation easier for them, because I know what it is like. I'm connected to the human realm, and so I can do that for them. And so you can obviously imagine that a lot of souls who transition create through their expectation, I kid you not, be ready to hear this, through their expectation create energy replicas. In other words, in the spirit world, energy replicas of their homes, of their cats, of their surroundings. Not to say that their former pets are not going to come and greet them, but the immediate experience is the expectation. Remember, that's what I was saying earlier. The moment the soul transitions, what do you expect it gets to be? And so that's how people create replicas of what's comfortable, because they expect it, right? Does it make sense? Okay. So the next thing that actually happens is something that's wildly known in the near death experiences world, and we call this the life review. So this is where, with crystal clarity, you get to review your life. But now, not only do you get to review your life, but also there's no hiding, you guys. There's no hiding. So you don't pretend for yourself during your review that you love your parent who never really cared for you and never took care of you, right? Like, you express and are honest with your emotions and your resentments and your feelings. And so during that life review, we get to see how the enemies we had could have been really people who advocated for us and were there for us. We really get to see it all, the impact we had, the waves we created. Now, just because we're in spirit form, we don't get to be immediately wiser. You know what I mean? It's not like all of a sudden once Mira dies, Mira becomes a master of light and consciousness. Mira is still going to be Mira, but Mira is very honestly going to study through her life, and here's what Mira is going to learn. You too. Each one of us is going to, that's the cat, each one of us is going to very clearly understand how our thoughts create our reality. But not only understand, we're going to experience it. We're going to experience the connections, the situations, the people, the stories. We're going to viscerally live through that movie, through that experience. And only then, once we really review our life, then we'll become aware of our bigger self. We'll become aware of our incarnational stories and how this little story fits into the other stories, right? We'll become aware of our soul, if you will. And that's when we get to connect with other souls. We get to hang out with our guides. We get to design our next incarnation. Now, where do we go next? Well, it really depends on what we want. We can choose to be back on Earth if there's still lessons to be learned and value to be derived, or we can choose to go on other dimensions of existence. But you see, the experience of consciousness will never really disappear. In other words, Mira will never blink out of being Mira. Does that make sense? In other words, each one of us, that terrifying terror, if we can say that terrifying terror of us being annihilated, never gonna happen.